going on, everybody? Dogman Dan here. We are in Warframe, and we are going to talk a little bit about endgame upgrade concepts. Mythology 100 over here on YouTube sent me a message and directed me over to a post that he made over on the Warframe forums. I will have a link. But I'm going to go ahead and address everything that he's got written in there. I'm just going to kind of go through it and give you my thoughts and opinions as I go through it, because that's what he asked me to do. And so over there on the forums, he's under FoxXF, or FX, if I could speak. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, please do feel free to leave comments, thoughts, suggestions below here in this video. I'm sure he'll get a look at them and he will be able to see them. I will definitely make sure that he is aware of it if he hasn't checked out this video once it goes live. And, you know, if the topic gets far enough and we can get it into the eyes of DE even, there is that possibility. You never know. Anyway, so let's just kind of go through it. So this is his concept of the proficiency system, optional solution to enemy scaling issues. So, yeah, let's see what we're looking at. So the issues that he's addressing in this version here, okay, enemy scaling, that obviously we know that's a pressing issue, translating into enemies absorbing so much damage while also being able to inflict enough damage to defeat players in one hit, right? Scaling encourages players to use specific tactics to complete higher level mission with specific warframes they are not too comfortable with and don't favor as much because the scaling sucks. And Warframe weaponry, vast and great majority of them tend to fall off against higher level enemies due to armor scaling. Again, so we got enemy scaling, scaling in general, and armor scaling. All these issues that he would like to address here. So, solution. The favorite suggestion for many players is simply just fix the enemy scaling. We know this, right? Nobody wants to see nerfs or buffs. They just say, just fix the enemy scaling and it's all good and done. I don't agree with how that stands. Personal suggestion from Fox is try out an endgame feature that allows players to scale the capabilities of their Warframe. That's an interesting idea. So, going through this, we have the proficiency system. This is what his suggestions are. The proficiency system is an endgame feature that allows players to improve their warframes and their equipped weaponry to scale up according to the enemy's level. The goal here is to garner the feeling of the warframes are capable of adjusting their tactics against even stronger foe based on how proficient they are under a certain category. This is kind of just looking at it here. I haven't gone through the whole proficiency thing. We're about to go how this proficiency works. Initially, I'm going to say to you, enemy scaling needs to be fixed regardless of what is coming up or what is this idea. But let's take a look at what you're suggesting here on how does this proficiency system work. Proficiency is going to be account bound. Okay, designed to create a feeling that the Tenno can learn to adjust their tactics against stronger enemies using their maxed gear, rank 30, against level 30 plus foes. Okay. Account bound. Got it. Making this system account bound allows better diversification on what weaponry players want to use. Examples: some wish to bring the Lato to a level 100 sortie. May not be capable of doing that right now. So, proficiency scales players' warframes weapons based on their enemy level and their proficiency level. Okay. When a player enters a mission with enemies level 30 plus, based on the category of their proficiency level, it will improve the stats total damage of that same category. I kind of see where you're going with this. Initially, all players will have level 30 proficiency in all categories and must complete different tasks to rank up their proficiency. Okay. In their proficiency in one category is equal to the enemy level of a 30 plus. Mission. Let's see. Okay, I read that wrong. Let me reiterate that part. In their proficiency in one category is equal to the enemy level of a 30+ mission, where their damage stats in that category will scale up to meet that level. Okay. If the proficiency level in one category is less than the enemy level of the mission, the damage stats in that category scales to the max proficiency only. And if the proficiency level in one category is higher than the enemy level of the mission, their stats in that category will match the same level of that mission until the enemy level becomes greater than the proficiency level of or in that category. Okay. Seems a little confusing here. But we're gonna move forward with it. And I'm gonna put some stuff here on the screen to kind of go over the categories of proficiency with you. So the categories of proficiency, we're going to have survival proficiency, which will improve the max health of the player's warframe based on the enemy level of the mission. We have a protective proficiency, which will improve max shield of the player's warframe based on the enemy level of a mission. We have the power proficiency, which will improve the total damage of the player's warframe damage abilities based on the enemy level. We have the primary proficiency, which improves the total damage of the player's primary weapon based on enemy level. Secondary, total damage based off the secondary and the enemy's level. And of course, melee proficiency is exactly the same. Improves the total damage of the melee based on the enemy level of the mission. Some of these things kind of fall in line with some of the stuff that I believe is sitting in the focus trees. Of course, the focus trees are a whole different issue in and of themselves. Debatable categories here are companion survival proficiency, protective companion proficiencies, and companion power proficiencies. Which I don't know if you really need that, to be honest, if we're talking about it. Companions are give or take. You don't really need them. They're good to have. They do help out depending upon who you are and how you play. But yeah, I could see that still being debatable based off of the mission. You know, for the most part, categories we have survival, protective, power, primary, secondary, melee. It's an interesting way to do it. I think part of this proficiency, though, comes from the focus trees, if you will. You know, you can get that increase in damage and whatnot. And I still think that no matter what we're doing, we're talking about this conversation. Enemy scaling is still very wonky at best, same as armor scaling, and those things actually really do need to be addressed before you could even institute any type of idea of a proficiency system. Okay, so an example in this system: a player enters a level 50 survival mission with an ember, a lato, and a machete. The player has level 50 survival proficiency, level 55 secondary proficiency, and a level 35 melee proficiency. In addition, let's assume that each level proficiency allows a plus 5% bonus. So, in a level 50 survival, the player gains a plus 20% health because they're in a survival mission, a plus 20% damage on the secondary because of the mission level, and a plus 5% melee damage based off of the mission level. Survival ranks up to a level 55. The player now has 20%, 25%, and 5% melee. Survival ranks up to a level 60. The player now has another 20% health, 25% secondary, 5% melee, because each of the category are less than the enemy level of the mission. That's interesting, but to me, that's kind of taking skill out of the game. Okay, every time you rank the enemies scale up, I'm just going to give you more health and more damage. You're not really, in my thoughts, in my head, you're not really changing anything. all you're doing is letting the back end scaling system keep being a failure at best, and you're just trying to adjust for it. And at some point, it feels like the adjustments are actually um, too much, because if you've got no skill and you have every 5 levels, you know, you're being given more damage, more health. Oh, we'll just keep making it easy, easy, easy. It just doesn't seem like the right way to go about it. Now, I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just saying it just right now to me, and this is entirely based off of how I play, it doesn't seem like that would be the way to go about it. Gaining proficiencies required intermissions with a rank 30 equipment in order to gain these proficiencies. The more rank 30 equipment the player brings, the more proficiency they can obtain. Debatable thoughts are proficiency is gained through endgame content, such as trials and sorties. Trials and sorties are not endgame content. I don't care what they say. Nightmare trials grant the highest amount of proficiency. Sure. Again, still not endgame. It's just an 8-player raid. Just because the way they've set it up, they're considering it endgame because it's got the worst enemy scaling and armor scaling and everything else is going on in terms of how the game really plays. It's where you see it the worst. Doesn't mean that it's endgame. I know that's what they want to consider it, but it is far from it. In progress, questions about the proficiency system. Should gaining proficiency be obtained only in in-game missions? Should there be more diverse proficiency categories? How long a grind should the proficiency system be? Capacity to how much proficiency a player can obtain? Should upgrading proficiency require an additive method or method similar to the arcane enhancements? Could this concept be part of the focus system? I think, and this is where I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just going to go back to the same thing I've said multiple times in here. Enemy scaling, armor scaling, no matter how you look at it, has to be fixed on the back end. It has to be adjusted. It has to be addressed. Because anything other than that right now is just a band-aid. Your proficiency system as you have it is not a bad concept. And truthfully, it may actually be a concept that would be better than the focus system that's currently in game. Because I personally think the focus system is stupid. The way it is, how there's only 1 or 2 skill trees in the focus that are actually really worth it. That everybody pretty much plays. I'm not saying that that's the only way to go. There are obviously, each one has its own strengths and weaknesses to it, but the majority of them are played in a certain way. I think the proficiency system would be a good viable solution to potentially remove the borked, bonked, whatever you want to call it, wonky focus system. I don't think it should be something that would be on top of the focus system, because then we're just piling things on top of other things. You know, you got your syndicate system, you got your focus system, now let's add a proficiency system on top of that. We're just adding too much for people to have to think about when they're going to play every day, and it just makes it more tedious. I think we're not really fixing the issues. Now, like I said, go over there to his post, share your thoughts, or share them here as well. With DE, when we go back to this, with DE making these changes to the Warframes and trying to balance up the Warframes, whether you call it a nerf, a balance, a buff, whatever it is, I can see the future potential of where they're trying to go. They want to get all the frames and weaponry up to a certain point where they feel that it's even based for everybody. And then now that they've got all these fairly set even level, everything as in an even level, there's not really this one is the one that anyone, who's anybody is going to take and you've got like 7 Excaliburs and 1 Trinity going in on a trial because that's the ultimate way to go. Now you're making it to the point where everybody's set, that everybody can play what they want to play, and now, okay, I've got this scale part, the nerfs, the buffs, the balances all adjusted. Now what I can do is I can go to my back-end system and really work with scaling and figure out how to scale the enemies properly, how to scale armor properly, how to scale health, whatever it is, to adjust for a better balance between all these changes you've just made to your main part of the game, make all the frames and weaponries feel like anybody could play anything, versus where we stand now, where the higher level you go, the more limited one wants to say you pretty much are at this exact point to what you can play with. Higher level missions, you're gonna pretty much, you want to take your syndicate level weapons, your main weapons. You want to take certain specific frames because the enemy scaling and armor scaling is such shit right now, and it's gotten way out of hand. Not something that should have happened. Not something that should have taken 3 years to be done. Nerfing and balancing, adjusting, buffing, whatever you want to call it, shouldn't have happened 3 years after the fact of them starting. I get it. You got caught up in everything. Problem is, you're also caught up. D's also caught up in always needing to feel like they need to have new content, because so many people are bitching, oh, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do. And so you're constantly pushing out new. You're not adjusting the back end. And that's, I honestly think, and I've said it many times, what they need to do is stop pushing out new and just focus on changes. I don't care if there's patch on patch addressing all this back end stuff that's been sitting there and boiling year over year, to the point where it's at now, where everybody's just pissed and people want to quit. But looking at this proficiency system as it is, as you've suggested it, to me, I see the concept, I get the idea of what you're going with, and I personally think it would probably come out better for the system that you're suggesting, the concept you're suggesting. I think it would come out better instead of the current focus system. That's my opinion. But like I said, I don't think that there's anything we can really do or address or look at and say this is the way to go without getting to that point where they've addressed on the back end their scaling issues and scaling problems. I don't think nothing that's said, thought of, concepted, whatever you want to say, is going to work properly without a proper adjustment at that point. But I appreciate you coming to me, sending me the link, asking me to talk about it, and that's what I've done. Hopefully I've given you some insight. Hopefully everybody else will get on here or over to your post, give you some more thoughts, impressions, insights. Maybe it'll get over to DE, because they do look at everything. They look at everything that I post in terms of videos. I know that because I always try to share everything with the team, make sure that they're aware of it, especially when I'm talking about something specific. Whether it goes any farther than that, at least I know that I've kind of addressed it, what it is, and I know that they're looking at everything on the forums as well. While they may not always respond to you, I know that they're looking at stuff like this, especially when the topics do get pretty big and the concepts do get, to a point where there is a possibility that something could be there. So, all we can do is work on things together as a community, and if we do that, we can help influence where the game continues to go. Though I think that no matter what is and what is coming is going to happen regardless. So we have to just push through all the changes that are coming, and they're inevitable and they need to happen no matter what. Until the next episode, thanks for tuning in. I will catch you guys soon.